So this presentation is going to be about corruption in Brazil. Specifically, I'm talking about Operation Lava Jato, or in English, we call it Operation Car Wash. So, to begin with, for many Brazilians, we have dealt with corruption for several decades. Even since the time Brazil first became independent. And there were several times attempts were made to reform the constitution and laws of Brazil, as well as many coups and attempted coups too. My name is Gabriel Ramos, once again, and at the end of my speech, my audience will be informed on the extent and significance of corruption that is currently taking place in the country of Brazil, along with the actions of how and why people in whom they are fighting against corruption are attempting to solve the situations that are taking place over there. Coming up with theories and explanations involving Operation Lava Jato, which I just explained a few seconds ago. The reason why I want to make a speech regarding that matter is not only because I have Brazilian background, or at least partial Brazilian background, but also personally because I feel patriotic towards Brazil. Two, and I hope that Brazil can one day thrive and improve from the bottom up. I've also wanted to discuss this age-old topic as it was something that my mother had already experienced with the country, even after she moved to the US back in 2000. Firstly, we're going to talk about Brazil's current president and also president during the years of 2003 to 2010. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. So, about Lula da Silva, throughout the presidency of Lula from 2003 to 2010, as Petrobras, the largest oil company in Latin America, was making the discovery from the coast of Rio de Janeiro. Executive posts were being offered to Lula's political allies to help benefit his Congress. But when the Workers' Party had to stop paying the coalition partners, Lula's alliances lessened to having a minority rule twice in Congress, as his attempted reformations towards poverty and social spending had only gone through his parliament by bribery. Even after he received aid from the Brazilian Democratic Movement Party, the PMDB, Brazil's largest political party. Despite their status as a party, the PMDB never took a leadership role, instead making deals to benefit their respectable parties, basically multiple factions consisting of conservative rural landowners, urban social democrats, evangelical nationalists, all the way up until former guerrillas, whose common ground is to secure and prestige the bribery that come with them in terms of government posts. The party itself has been involved in all corruption schemes in terms of modern Brazilian history. Next, Michel Temer. Temer was heavily involved in the corruption situation too, as after Lula made a deal with the PMDB to control Petrobras and the funds made with it. Severo, the director of the international division, was forced to step down after failing to deliver sufficient funds. Afterwards, Temer will also take leadership of the PMDB in order to control who got the millions of dollars being siphoned off of Petrobras, Odebrecht, and the suppliers. Over 10 million reais was donated by former Odebrecht Vice President Claudio Melo Filho, in which he testified that back in 2014 that his money was used to fund Temer's political campaign. But Temer denied those allegations, calling it frivolous and untruthful. No charges were filed, and all testimonies against him were withdrawn. Prosecutors say that there was not enough evidence. Temer was technically untouchable. During the impeachment proceedings against Dilma Rousseff, The mayor was installed as interim president. Many critics speculated that the mayor was being protected to ensure a degree of stability through a period of an economic crisis that occurred back in mid-2016. Even during the times when he was found guilty of election violations and was disqualified by a lower court in Sao Paulo. It did not change anything considering he was shielded by immunity of office. Dilma Rousseff. Third, after the 2010 election, Dilma Rousseff took over Lula as leader of the Workers' Party and became president of a coalition government. Later in 2013, Rousseff had tried to control an angry public by fast-tracking laws aimed at rooting out systematic fraud. She was accused of conspiring to obstruct justice along with Lula, who was considered as the mastermind of the Petrobras corruption scheme. Lula was claimed to have organized the payoffs for the sake of exiling Severo outside of Brazil. This was because he wanted to protect his close allies, who had also been involved in negotiations between politicians and oil company officials. Lula and Rousseff was accused of lying to save his own skin and was interrogated. But once the recording with Lula was released, he was accused of betrayal, which led to Amaral bring his testimony by police, saying he wanted to do a nation a favor by bringing people like Rousseff and Lula to justice. She would also be accused of false accounting by shifting significant funds between accounts to make government finances look better than they were. The bid to oust Rousseff out of power began in November 2015 by another corrupt politician in an attempt to stop or divert Operation Car Wash. Unfortunately, most of the people who voted for Rousseff out of office were either charged or investigated for far more serious crimes. Corruption is not necessarily limited to just government officials, as even higher rankings of major companies can practice gross activity too. So, now about Petrobras. Firstly, the protest regarding Petrobras. A week after Lula was briefly detained for the Petrobras kickback scheme, there were additional allegations of influence peddling, including deals secured for Odebrecht in return for generous payments to companies owned by Lula's relatives. As a result, millions of anti-government protesters took to the streets, bearing inflatable dolls of Lula in prison clothing, 13-171. As you can see, this image right here, look closely, 13171. And over here, that's Rousseff, mãe do petrolão, mother of petroleum. The protesters chanted, "Fora Dilma!" Rousseff out, in English. And also shaking brooms to symbolize the need for a clean sweep. A coffin was also needed to make fun of Michel Temer during the protests in Rio de Janeiro. Protesters would also hailed Judge Moro as a hero, along with Newton Ishii, who was responsible for arresting the perpetrators of the scheme at the airport. Protesters would applaud him as graffiti paint and banner draped from balconies read, "God save Moro." For Ishii, he was nicknamed Japonês Bonzinho, the good Japanese, because he actually is Japanese Brazilian. Racially speaking here, with samba tribute songs and a 6-high-meter doll with lyrics, imagining a suspect waking up to find that they are determined the target of Operation Car Wash. They all said, "Oh my God, I am politically dead." Knocking on my door is the Japanese Fed. Ishii was a celebrity, so much to the point where he felt trapped. For example, he was mobbed by his own supporters and had to be escorted by security guards. Another cop pulled him over for just to get an autograph of him. He concluded that the rich were going to stay in jail for a time. Now, a little bit about Mr. Severo. Severo and other Petrobras directors were responsible for deliberately overpaying on contracts with various companies for office construction, drilling rigs, refineries, and exploration vessels. Severo was also among many who used small businesses such as petrol stations and car washes to launder the profits of the crime. Their contractors that they were paying had formed an agreement to ensure they were guaranteeing business on excessively lucrative terms if they agreed to channel a share of between 1 to 5% of every deal into secret slush funds. Whatever the decision of the powerful few have the nation in their hands does, can for the most part affect the whole nation, not just your city, not just your state, and it can happen in either a good or bad way. Now for the economic effects of Brazil. A turbulent crisis. By the start of 2016, the economy had plunged into recession. The main cause was a collapse in global commodity prices. It was just the car wash investigation that made the situation worse. Prosecutors had ordered Petrobras to suspend business with many of its contracts, including Odebrecht, and the biggest building firm in Latin America. Projects were scrapped, workers were laid out, and the unemployment rate almost doubled in the space of 2 years. Political activity was crushed. The Workers' Party. The party was initially intended to fight off corruption, but instead it became the very thing it swore to destroy, which ruled for 13 years in Congress, all while the majority of the public blamed economic misery and political gridlock on them. Hypocritically, after Cunha was accused of lavish spending habits, the Workers' Party refused to protect Cunha after Cunha fought back with Rousseff by accusing her of false accounting. Rousseff's supporters later called the action a coup, even though the Workers' Party approved the impeachment by majority decision. For the investigation in total, there was 2 billion USD siphoned from Petrobras in bribes and secret payments for contract work. 3.3 billion USD paid in bribes by Odebrecht. Over 1,000 politicians believed to have been connected with the payments from the meat packing firm JBS. 16 companies implicated and at least 50 congressmen accused, with 4 former presidents under investigation. The newspapers that covered the scheme blamed the socialists in Brasilia. But in reality, almost all the parties in Brazil clearly had some form of connection to the scheme. It was the Workers' Party that put the reforms in place when investigation proceeded. During Temer's first month as president, 3 more of his ministers were forced to step down as a result of secret phone recordings, which confirmed Rousseff had been ousted because she would not call off the car wash investigation. Cases of Brazilian corruption has been noted even outside of the Brazilian borders, where Odebrecht had a department dedicated to bribes called the Division of Structured Operations, which made close to 800 million USD in illicit payoffs for more than 100 countries for over 15 years. Foreign corporate suppliers would also face regulatory and shareholder inquiries about the bribes they paid to secure contracts with Petrobras, including Rolls-Royce, which reported heavy losses as a result of the scheme, with investigations conducted on 6 different stadiums used from 2014 to 2016. The investigations shook political and economic life and raised hopes that for once justice would be applied to the rich and powerful. Several of the unarrestable senators, congressmen, businessmen, and governors will be put into jail, including Cunha and Marcelo Odebrecht. Even Ishii was suspended from the investigation after he lost an appeal due to an earlier bribery charge. The government had also attempted to stop Operation Car Wash by reducing the federal police budget by 44% and reducing the number of agents working for it. All these reasons could be as to why corruption occurs, along with how the situation in Brazil is being handled itself. So, for the conclusion, what is corruption? If you still do not know what corruption means, here you go. The textbook definition of corruption. Corruption is the dishonest or illegal behavior performed especially by powerful people such as government officials or police officers. The inducement to the wrong by improper or unlawful means, mostly briberies or threats. Now for the government of Brazil. So how the Brazilian government ideally works is that it includes a bicameral system, just like the United States, with the upper house being the federal Senate, the lower house being the Chamber of Deputies. The legislative body for Brazil is called the National Congress. The federal Senate has 81 members, serving an 8-year term of office. There are 3 senators from each of the country's 26 states, including the capital district of Brasilia. In the Chamber of Deputies, there are 513 seats in total. The number of deputies elected is proportional to the size of the population of their respective state, 8 being the minimum and 70 being the maximum amount of allowed deputies in the chamber. Elections are held quadrennially, meaning every 4 years. The president of the Chamber of Deputies is elected every 2 years. The country itself is a federal presidential republic, with no office for prime minister, obviously. For the office of presidency and vice presidency, there is a 2-term limit and may be re-elected for only a single consecutive term. The limit, however, is not for life, as a former president that served for 2 consecutive terms may run for presidency again after at least 1 term has elapsed. Whoever wishes to run for a different office, regardless of the jurisdiction or branch of government, must resign from office at least 6 months before election day. The vice president may replace the office of the president in case of death, resignation is abroad, or impeachment. Now, to finish off with my mother's thoughts, my mother hasn't really said that much. All I remember her saying is that she doesn't like Lula nor Bolsonaro, which are part of 2 different parties, in case you're wondering. And here are my sources. Pause the video if you want to take the time to read them. So this is all I want to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. I hope you guys are informed that we are trying our best to fight corruption in Brazil. It's hard, I know. It's like any other country. Even here, in this country has corruption too. And once again, goodbye for now.